I'm going to call the meeting to order. No alternates to see. All regular members here. Not all. Except there is not here. We no alternates to see. The minutes. Any changes to the agenda, John? John's on vacation, so we're on our own. Oh boy. I do that. The minutes of June 24th, 2024, any changes, corrections, make a motion, we accept them as presented.
Second. Go ahead. No, second.
Okay, Justin,
I did last week.
all those in favor?
Aye.
That would be unanimous. Audience of citizens, anything anybody would like to bring up to us that isn't already on the agenda? So, first, business item is a continuation of a public hearing under item 6. There's 3 different public hearings. We'll go through them one by one. And I'll open them all up at once, but we'll go through them in order after we've opened up the public hearing. The public hearing is for item 6.1, zoning amendment application to revise sections 21.2.3.11 to replace current section 52.7.19 and eliminate section 52.7.21 for multifamily dwellings. And also to revise sections 8.3 accessory dwelling units and 2-family dwellings. And then also to amend the application to revise section 9 definition of a structure. So those are items we will go through. So we opened our public hearing at our last meeting. We have a fair amount of input from research done by members, most specifically Mr. Powell, and we would like to hear from the town. I know that there's been a lot of discussion, and we do have a letter from Rhonda Kincaid, an email actually, with regard to some background information that she's done on accessory dwelling unit regulations. And I just first say anything that commission members have for questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to Rhonda, and then Bob, I'll have you present what you come up with after Rhonda. So I was going to ask you to go over this letter that you sent to us, the email that you sent to us. It's fascinating.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. At the last hearing, the question came up about whether there were any standards that the HUD had.
Yes.
Or any other government standards. And, you know, I'm not an expert, but we looked and did as much research as we could. And we only found one standard that addressed size, and it was the state of Connecticut Department of Housing requirements for design and construction of elderly and congregate housing. And they talked about having dwelling units that could be in some kind of congregate housing that would have at least 700 square feet. And that was dwelling for 1 bedroom, double occupancy. So it followed to us that having 2 bedrooms, which we would advocate, would require more than 700 square feet, but how much would that be? And the only other thing we could find was something from a group called the Home Modification Occupational Therapy Alliance. And they're an international group, and they've had suggestions, not standards, but some suggestions about how to make sure the bedroom was wheelchair accessible. Some of the other standards that I didn't put in here that we did find, talked about, you know, from HUD. They listed a lot of things, like you had to have so many feet clearance for a wheelchair and that kind of thing, but it didn't get into square footage that would require that.
Okay.
But the occupational therapy folks talked about
Just
square footage.
I apologize. I didn't ask you to announce your name, full name and address
Oh,
for the record, and I should have. I apologize.
So I'm Rhonda Kincaid. I live at 8 Basket Stop Road, and I'm speaking on behalf of Polish University in Methodist.
Thank you.
So, you know, long story short, their suggestion was that it would take 256 square feet. To have a bedroom be fully accessible, and allow for a dresser, a normal thing. So. We did find a property standard that required the beds have to be accessible on two sides and one end, wheelchair accessible. So all that led us to believe that at least 900 square feet was still reasonable to allow. So. And we did point out that we think there was an error, unintentional, in the math, in the calculation of the 30%, in that 30% of 2,200. So if you allow anything under 2,000, that's very different.
I think we could make it more clear than the way we stated it, so I'm certain that likely needs some attention, depending on what the desired result is.
So we just did the math and suggested a higher square footage for our 30.
Okay,
That was our thing, so that was our response. We looked at the.
nice when we find out that things are confusing before we ask. I know I didn't mean to be funny with that, but yeah, this is the right time to find it out. I appreciate your input. Thank you. Anything, Mr. Powell?
I share your frustration trying to find sizes. I did do a search on typical sizes for handicap units and look at various layouts. Just an internet search, which is obviously nationwide, not necessarily Connecticut based. But I did look at the ones that I thought would meet the Connecticut handicap requirements. Those are based on the national standard, but if you look at some units for ADU units, they're not accessible. Like the bathrooms are too small or whatever. So I weeded those out and specifically looked at ones that I knew would meet the handicap requirements, handicap accessibility requirements. What I did find is for one bedroom and one bath, they range from 420 square feet to 637 square feet. Ones I found. Okay. And again, those meet handicap requirements. 2 bedroom, 1 bath ranged from 600 to 866 square feet. Again, these are all net square feet, inside dimensions, not outside dimensions. And then 2 bedrooms with 2 baths, I found from 800 to 1,030 square feet. So that was the range that I found in my investigation. So it's I think pretty much we're saying sort of the same thing in a range. One of the things I did find in Connecticut, the Department of Housing and CHFA, CHFA, which is Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, they loan money to people to build units like this or build multi-family housing. They don't have specific sizes for rooms, but they have specific furniture that has to go into the rooms, and specific sizes, minimum sizes of dressers, minimum sizes of beds, minimum sizes of side tables. So basically, they're not telling you what the size of the room is, but if you put those together with all the accessibility widths that you need around furniture and around beds, then you'll come up with a particular design. So again, some of the units that I looked at on the smaller side may not meet those requirements. Again, they're not necessarily statewide requirements, but they're requirements if you're financing through the Connecticut Housing Finance. I also noted that there is one public act, 21-29, which was enacted in September of 2021. Just to paraphrase, maximum net floor area of an ADU shall not exceed 30% of the principal dwelling or 1,000 net square feet, whichever is less, or if the local regulations allow larger than area. So some of the towns that I looked at, some of the towns that have ADU regulations are reverting back to that 30% or 1,000 square feet. This act, this public act does allow for us as a body to change that, to make it greater. I don't think we can make it less, we're allowed to make it greater. As I was going through this, I said, well, why? If you just put ADU requirements in Connecticut, then it'll come up with a bunch of towns, because a lot of towns have been doing this, so I started going through there. Went through probably 10 or 12 towns, went through their regulations, and gleaned a few things that I thought would be pertinent to what we're talking. I'll just go through the list of things, and then if you want to talk about it, we can. The ADU must be on a residential zone lot. The ADU must be on a lot with only one principal single-family dwelling. One ADU per parcel or per lot. The ADU must be on a conforming lot or a legally non-conforming. The ADU on lots less than 1/2 acre must be attached to the principal dwelling. Maximum size for an ADU is 2 bedrooms. No additional driveways or curb cuts are permitted. At least 4 off-street parking spaces must be provided for the principal dwelling and the ADU. And garages may be considered part of the parking spaces. At least one side of an ADU must be at or above grade. So basically that's for if you're converting a basement into an ADU, one of the sides has to be on grade, the whole side, north side, south, whatever it is, has to be complete walkout, has to be on grade. The height of an ADU cannot be higher than the principal dwelling. And the property owner must reside in either the principal dwelling or the ADU. Again, I'm not advocating these, I just thought that we good conversation points for us in particular. And the public as well. Some of these we've already addressed, obviously. Some of the others I thought were kind of interesting and would be worthy of further. And that's basically what I found.
Yeah, I wish I had this in print for everyone.
But I think it becomes almost impossible things. So, what you're saying that it all looks to be a lot very logical. I think that again, you get to the difficulty of enforcement, and I think when you have require that the owner be in either the principal residence or the ADU, that what do you do when they aren't, or when they pass away? Find that they need to move away, does it make the second unit unusable? What does the enforcement become?
I'm sorry, are you all set?
Yes.
Okay, Dave?
So I met in interest of answering some of the questions from one time I met with Jason, the building inspector, and I tried to get some clarification on a few points. So basically what our discussion revolved around was the feasibility of doing these units. So if a separate unit is requested, the owner will need a state exception, and it's usually not a problem to get. It's just another hoop you have to jump through. If you're adding one bedroom, whether it be attached or detached, in most cases, the owners don't need to make changes to the existing septic system. Obviously, there's going to be some non-conforming lots where the septic system is a problem already. But for any additions to the bedrooms, whether it be detached or attached, owner must prove that they have room for a code compliant reserve septic system. So again, it's going to eliminate all the small lots. Any 2-bedroom structure will require the owner, this is unequivocal, I guess this is regardless of what's there. Any 2-bedroom structure will require the owner to modify the existing septic system or add a new septic system. All setbacks, coverages, and soils to be per code. The building inspector, he had his own opinions, obviously, said that his parents are in this situation where he's working on getting them housing of this type. He has been researching and said that he's been able to find some good plans in the 500 to 600 square foot range. And then I did some casual research over the past 2 weeks since our last meeting, and I've spoken to a lot of people my age and older, and a lot of them make the comment to me that their first house was 700 to 750 square feet, and it was very livable. Obviously, it wasn't ADA compliant, but it was more than 1 bedroom also. So I think my takeaway from this, if we can generalize, is that there's gonna definitely be some hoops for people to jump through to do these ADA units or detached or attached units. But it's not gonna be impossible. But there's gonna be a lot, I asked them a specific question, if you took a subdivision like Heritage Drive. What are the chances are that those people that have what they're conforming lots, mainly an acre to an acre and a quarter? What are the chances are that people could put units on those, a detached unit on those lots, and he said very slim. Between well radiuses and septic setbacks and not so much land coverage, but mainly setbacks and staying away from your neighbor's wells and that type of thing. It's gonna be very difficult for most of those people to put an extra unit on, to do an attached bedroom or, you know, extra unit is feasible, but detached is gonna be very tough. And so the long and short of that is 2-bedroom is gonna be much more difficult.
I think.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about this at the last meeting, where not only having sort of some kind of requirements from a planning standpoint as far as square footage. Okay. There's a lot of other regulations that we have within the planning regulations, right? Setbacks, well radius.
Yep.
The whole thing is septic and reserve area for septic and all that. That's really gonna make it very tough on the majority of smaller lots
Yes.
in the town to do.
And what we can't address is covenants that exist, a subdivision covenant that would preclude doing that in the first place.
Right.
That's a civil issue. Don't even get into that. So there's somebody in the audience.
I'm trying to look up
Just for the
again,
record.
2129, Brenda Kincaid, 8 Basket
You don't
Joe.
have to go through it, just a minute.
Okay,
It's easier when we do the minutes.
right, which I give you a lot of kudos to. But I believe that 2129 says that you can't require someone to, an owner or family member on the property to be in either the primary house or the ADU. I think there's, I'm researching it now, I'm trying to read the small print.
My town has done something against the law.
I think there's some towns that I looked at a few of those towns.
The town of Wyndham currently requires that if you want to add an accessory dwelling unit. The doorway can't face the road and it has to be occupied by the owner.
Yeah,
We have considerably more liberal regulations already, because we don't require that under our current ADU regulation. But, you know, can I ask that we not spend time on that, because I don't know that anyone really supports that concept.
okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
I like to fix it, you know, how we-
That,
Hey, Rick, can we get back to the question of what happens if people leave?
Well, right, we don't go there, then it's a non-issue.
We're not addressing it.
Yeah.
What do you mean, we don't?
What Rick is saying is that it doesn't seem like there's much interest in anybody requiring the owner be a owner occupied. And if we don't require that, then we don't need to discuss it.
You know, like many things, and I'm tooting Columbia's horn, is we tend to be early adopters, you know, the watershed, nutrient allocation plan. Our ADU regulation was considerably more expansive than other towns permitted, and a science-based multifamily, we haven't gotten into that part of the public hearing. I love it when we break ground in a way that just empowers.
Okay.
You know, we've consistently done it, Justin, that was.
Yeah, no, I think that's important.
Science.
Yeah, no, and I think when it comes to this, make a couple of comments. I think what we've done is given people a good envelope to work within, where we're not micromanaging things, which is super important. If you start micromanaging it, then it's becoming impossible to work anyway. So why are we doing that? And we're making people lives miserable at the same time. I think maybe part of the involved information is helpful as far as square footage, because I think, you know, part of the discussion last time was, well, what is that maximum square footage? 950 square feet. And even with that, even if we were to go on the large end of that maximum square footage, we still have to remember that what we just talked about 5 minutes ago, there's so many limitations or limiters, natural limiters through other regulations, through, you know, whatever it might be, that it's not going to be just, you know, 900 square foot ADUs everywhere, right? So I think if we look at it that way, as far as what's the maximum, what do we settle on, understanding that In a very rare case, it might be the maximum, but more likely it'll be something smaller. And it'll still have to meet all the same regulations and permitting and all the other processes that a person would normally have to go through. I think we've given people an opportunity to explore that, to figure out what they can afford and what they can do and make their own decisions. And I think that's what it comes down to.
One of the things that you touched on was septic conformity. I don't think we have to address that whatsoever, but just for information. In many cases, if you have a non-conforming lot, and let's consider outside of the lake overlay district, because that's what we're talking about. People will say all the time, oh, I have a new septic system, when what they have is a repaired septic system. And there are different rules that apply to a repaired system versus a brand new system from scratch. And the repaired may even have a full reserve area, but it may not entitle you by right, which you have in a fully conforming septic system, to expand one additional bedroom over time. So that's a layer that I don't think we should attempt to address here, just because there are more capable agencies that would address that.
I think my only reason for going there was to show those who were concerned that town was gonna turn into two families, that it's not gonna happen everywhere.
I think
Yeah, I agree with that one.
Dave, thank you.
Just for. We throw something out, I mean, based on all the constraints that a person would have when they develop. Maybe either they're attached or detached. Should we have just no sizes whatsoever? Just let them do
Well,
it.
my only concern would be, and I don't know if anyone else should, is I would still like the primary house to be bigger than the new one.
Well,
I mean, we could limit it to 2 bedrooms.
so,
Yeah, but that, you know,
so, okay, so here's the thing, in my mind, I fully agree with you. Everybody who knows me knows that I would agree with you. Because part of what we're dealing with is, well, an ADU versus a garage versus a barn versus I could put up a 50 by 50. Now, the caveat is, well, how many bathrooms and bedrooms do you have in a barn or an outbuilding, but aesthetically, that's what people generally care about, is the aesthetics of it. Well, people have the right to do that if their property allows it. That's not a hill I'm more willing to die on. You know, there's some language that John proposed in this, which Greg, we can go over whenever, about just capping it at a maximum. And doing away with 30% calculations. We already saw today how we can invest 30% calculation. So I think that that's a good compromise, but, you know,
Just having it open ended is a little too open ended.
I like it open-ended, but I'm sure.
Well, we've always
An idea.
been willing to explore new boundaries. If we could at some point, let's talk about that. But something that I feel is important is the document Bob used to go over his points. I'd like everybody to see that. I mean, at the very minimum, I don't want to close a public hearing this evening, and I don't want to make decisions tonight, because there's some really good points in here I'd like to discuss and talk through them. Even if we talk quickly and discard them, there's so many points on this list that have caused me to rethink a few things that I thought I had a perspective on. Yeah, and I just wanna, and I think we have an idea that we wanna make this as open-ended and comfortable as possible if we're going to adopt it, make it easy to implement without a lot of oversight necessary, only at the building stage.
I'll go along with whatever the consensus is. I disagree with you a little bit. I think we're in a spot where with what we have proposed and some of the, especially what John's latest input, I think clarifies a lot of the stuff that might concern people. I would be more in favor of kind of getting through as much today as we can.
Let's get through as much as we can, but what I've seen that was problematic for the commission in the past is where we have some additional ideas that get crafted on the fly to modify a document to take quick action. I never like to close a public hearing until the night we're about to vote. That way we can take in information right up until the last minute. But on the same token, I'd like to see a finished document so we can read through it and say, okay, let's read the whole document. Yeah, this is exactly what we wanted. When we craft language on the fly, not as comfortable with the depth of its, effectiveness.
Okay, so we have a draft right now. It does have a little bit different language than what we saw 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
So is there anything beyond what's in here that anyone?
well, I believe suggest that we go through this as a group and do it point by point. That's an important document, so let's give it the time it needs. So the most recent changes, so we're going over 21, 22, 23.
Three from the last page.
The only change you made is to say 950 square feet.
So instead of the 30% calculation, we just capped anything at 950.
Was there something in that list of Bob's things that you were? That jumped out again?
Yeah, some of the things that jumped out, I'm gonna go through this. I don't know that I'm stuck on the first point, ADU must be on the residential zone lot. You know, because there's a lot of legally non-conforming houses that might be in a commercial zone, and I wouldn't want to preclude them from being able to pursue this.
Then the one says,
Yes, so ADU must be on a lot with only one principal single-family dwelling. Well, then that would preclude ADUs being added at a later date on any multifamily lots that we might possibly pass. That's, for the time being, I'd be comfortable with that.
well, we also said that only 2 total dwelling units shall be allowed on each home.
Yeah, that's
So
addressed.
it's basically the same thing.
And in combination with the multifamily, which gets into 3 and 1, which obviously is not passed.
So I think we've already covered that.
So the language about, the fourth point, ADU must be on a conforming lot or a legally non-conforming lot. That language I would want to have our attorney review because does it also address grandfathered non-conforming lots? Is that a legally non-conforming lot? Or is that simply a grandfathered use on a non-conforming lot? So that's something I would want to certainly run by our attorney. I'm not comfortable with that last part of that sentence.
Just for a point of clarification for that, because we're not necessarily addressing that in the draft. Those are things that Bob found.
Yeah, I thought we should consider a lot of these before we vote on something. There were just some really good points brought up here, and I don't want to not consider them. ADU on lots less than 1/2 acre must be attached to the principal dwelling. Well, that's kind of intriguing. I don't know. That's
I think with all the other requirements we have, there's gonna be no room.
Yeah, it's not gonna be easy.
And they call it
very maximum size for an ADU is 2 bedrooms. I don't have a clear perspective on it, but it's something I wanted us all to discuss. Because I want the discussion to occur now and not say, gee, I wish we had thought about this later. No, is it?
But let's get, pause for a minute. What's the original premise for having ADUs? I mean, basically,
Accessory dwelling unit.
in-law, parent, grandparent, whatever, right?
Correct.
So anything larger than a 2-bedroom unit probably isn't necessary, right? You need 2 bedrooms, as a caregiver or something like that. 1.5 to 2 baths are nice also because of the caregiver.
So we
So
looked at
anything
your
larger than 2 bedrooms. probably isn't necessary.
And it becomes cost prohibitive at a certain point. So I mean, it's the concept of giving people that envelope to work within. I hate dictating bedrooms because we're gonna dictate square footage, right? I mean, they have something to work within. That seems most reasonable.
So at first glance, the next one, no additional driveways or curb cuts are permitted. Well, if you have a single family house and want to put a second curb cut in, you probably can do it. So put it in before you apply for the accessory dwelling unit. It's like cutting trees.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we had that requirement, it's like cutting down trees in the lake watershed. I mean, if you do it as part of a new construction plan, we have restrictions. So somebody really wants to do what they want on their land and cut the trees down, then 2 years later apply for a building permit.
So we do address adequate off-street parking.
That would be at our discretion.
Right.
Yeah, off-street, the parking requirement, sounds very logical, but do we really want it to be that specific?
I think what we got.
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Adequate?
Yeah.
At least one side of an ADU must be at or above grade. Haven't thought about that one either.
So what are the advantages, let's spitball out, what are the advantages of that, adding that?
One of the things,
I-
in basements, one of the things you're gonna have to have are means of egress windows.
Mhm.
Which are 5.7 square feet. There's certain height requirements for the sill, so that people can get out. And so basically, you've got almost 5 feet of exposed basement you have to have. Above grade, but this allows for a walkout, allows for really full-size windows instead of just egress windows. And I think the idea is, maybe you don't want to develop just the basement for certain. Make it a little more habitable.
If your only access to a basement is a bulkhead, and then you have the egress windows. Let's assume right now we're not aiming to use just an elderly family member or a family member. We're really not defining any of that. This was intriguing. I hadn't thought about this one, and just one of those ones I wanted out there for us to discuss. I don't have a strong perspective on it. The height of an ADU cannot be higher than the principal dwelling. I do like that. You know. And maybe over time we'll change that, but initially, with all the other expansive elements here. I think that's a reasonable limitation. And the last one is a non-starter, you know, the property owner must reside. These are comments Bob collected from other towns, and I think he just wanted them on the table for us to consider.
Not that that's all.
So, but there's a list of them there, and I would like everybody to have a chance to weigh in on them, and that's my point. If you,
Maybe,
I have one comment on the walkout basement. Maybe a nice compromise would not be the way they wrote it, but just write it so that it's regular walkout basement, because you could have frost wall and then some concrete wall, and then egress windows above it, and still have a doorway, a regular doorway out. So maybe we should just change that to a regular doorway out of the basement.
then it's only 5 feet wide.
Right,
I think the intent is to have at least the one.
no, I understand, but I'm just saying that could be a little difficult. You have to have a good slope to get a full walkout, a full frame wall on the back. Versus what I'm saying is a little bit of a compromise.
Yeah.
So at least one section of the basement wall has to have a regular door.
what about just simply stating legally, by definition, if they wanted a one or two bedroom unit in the basement, they're going to have legally permissible egress, and it's more of a building.
They have to have that as part of the building.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna have. Maybe that's already agreed. So we're talking egress.
Yeah.
That already right?
No, that was one of my reasons.
Okay.
Somebody said, why did it have to be on grade?
I didn't say, I assumed that was because it was for egress, and if we have a building code that governs that, why should we do it on a zoning basis?
That would be my opinion as well. I think we're done with regulation.
One of the things.
I'd like to hear it.
Thinking about that, one of the things, and I forgot, I didn't put it on here, but one of the requirements that one of the towns has that. You have to have a separate entrance to the ADU if it's attached. Can't go through the main house and then go to the ADU. Has to be separate. One town said it can't be facing the road, another town.
But you could argue that no longer an ADU, that's just an expanded, apartment.
That's what they do for condominiums. You don't have resident requirement, so you make apartments.
I wouldn't be in favor personally of requiring a separate entrance for an ADU. Let that be a building code issue.
And we have, so we're talking about attached ADUs, yeah, and it's already been regulations, we already have experience with that, so if it hasn't been an issue up to this point.
We usually, I'm having this discussion just so everyone knows. I'm really inviting public comment about the things that we're weighing in on here. I really want this process to be very inclusive of every member of the public who has a thought on it. That's going to result in a better regulation that meets the needs of the town, meets all of our needs. And a little departure from our traditional way of doing this, but this is, yes, Ian. For the record.
1-3 Lake Road. Try this one on. Okay, you have a good sized lot, but you're living in a little house. I mean, it's small, maybe 2 maybe 3 decades. And the elderly parents need a and the principal owner build themselves a bigger house and cause these little houses to become the.
So define that as the ADU.
building.
Yeah, I would see why not.
Well,
Didn't think of
we
that one.
have to meet that 22 that.
You just define the original house as the ADU and build a bigger other house.
And that could be, and that's a fairly. It's not that it's a fairly new challenge, other than the state legislation has changed, eliminating minimum square footages for homes. So you could technically run into an instance where it happens backwards, where somebody builds a 600 square foot primary. And then decides they want something bigger. I don't see that as. Negative necessarily, it's just a different order in which it happens.
I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah, it's a good point.
On record now.
To die if the little house is bigger than what you
I think it-
define.
I would think it depends on how you label
And we would have to somehow identify that you're changing
primary.
the primary to the secondary or the accessory. Would be part of the approval. Maybe. But this is a right.
Mhm.
So doesn't go before any commission.
We go to on a building plan, you have to label primary residence and ADU.
And then we have a process issue.
Why not?
Okay. Yes,
Coordinate basket shop, so I'm keeping in what she said. If you didn't have square footage. Mentioned, then what she's saying could work. It doesn't matter if the little house is bigger than what you are.
No, it's gonna be considered an ADU, that's inside.
Right, but you were at one point suggesting the possibility of not putting.
I threw that out, I think. I don't think anyone agreed to it.
It could make some sense.
Right.
Like,
But again, getting back to what the spirit of an ADU is. Not a 5,000 square. foot.
Yeah, there's the philosophical side,
Yeah.
which would differ versus what practically could pass probably, so.
most people's lots. How many lots in Columbia could really see that kind of expansion?
Yeah, no, and I think that's one of the important points through this exercise. That everyone needs to realize, because people's minds go to, this is gonna be uncontrolled. And it's just, there's so much natural control. So I think that's an important point.
okay. Yes,
Really, 100. I did a little research on. I did a little research before I knew that you were upping the limit to 950.
We haven't decided.
Well, I'm sorry, before your suggestion, your proposed of 950. Because my question was, how many people in Columbia are you in fact helping changing your revenue? Because we all recognize the limitations for just movement, soil, septic, sidelines, all of that that goes with it. So I'll only share one of the 6 that I did with you. This was under the old one. On Basket Shop Road, there is a 3.4 acre lot. The house footage is 2,072. They would only be able to build 621 square feet if you had the footage. But then there is a 15.78 acre lot. The square footage in the existing house is 2141. They would only be able to build 642. Whereas the others, you were getting 750. So what you had before, as Cole pointed out, created even more inequity than you were getting. And in my counting for calculations, Columbia has on the assessor's roll 2,169 houses. And of those, only 54 would allow you to build more than 1,000 square feet. So by doing or proposing the 950, you're actually helping a huge percentage of people who live in Columbia, if they can, in fact, meet. And I kind of agree with Bob and Justin that not having a limit, and letting people determine financially what they can build, if it meets all the requirements. Then if I want to build 1,200, or if I want to build 700.
Or 4,000 square feet.
I don't think anybody would build 4,000 square feet unless it became their primary residence. And the existing residence became,
You can never tell what's used.
yes, that's true.
Rick, Millie, you have to be somewhat careful with the house that I drive by when I go to Judy's sister, brothers in Coventry. The main house, the original house, looks like it might be 2,000 square feet. The addition that was put on it is about 3,000 square feet. It is just the ugliest, hugest thing in the world. And you just have to be careful. Yeah.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, well.
And I think going along with Tom's comment, the other thing you want to avoid is if they're able to build an unlimited size second building, you don't want to get into a situation like they do around Yukon where now all of a sudden you're renting out rooms. And that could cause some problems, even the neighbor.
Rick, is it okay if can we specifically talk a little bit about the changes that John had proposed and then circle back on?
There's only one in this section.
What's that?
When we go through all the different regulations, I hadn't moved on to these.
Yeah, whatever you're talking.
Go ahead, let's follow what you'd like.
Okay, well, I think it's blended in the conversation we're having now, so let's look at the.
Can I ask you, we'll get to you,
Carol.
yeah, but please don't just speak up.
Carol.
Justin was speaking.
I'm sorry,
I'll be real.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I sometimes don't hear well.
I'll be real quick. So it goes in line with this conversation that we're having now. So if we look at 8.3.3, the original language that we proposed was a detached or freestanding accessory dwelling unit shall not exceed 30% of the floor area of the primary dwelling unit, except that primary dwelling units having less than 2,000 square feet in floor area may have an accessory dwelling unit which does not exceed 750 square feet of floor area. John had a very good suggestion because philosophically, which as much as I would love to go down this road, I think not having any limit is going to be problematic. And it may be problematic for other reasons. I won't get into it right now. But he proposed, which I like, is a detached or freestanding accessory dwelling unit shall not exceed 950 square feet in floor area, period. So what that does, and this is where I think everyone's points are very important because we need to look at the natural limitations and what can happen. If we were to go down this road, we would give people that area to work within, knowing that probably not everybody's going to build a 950 square feet. Not everybody's going to build an ADU. Like we have to be careful with what we're talking about. But that gives them that area to work within up to that maximum. And then we don't have the calculations that a 950 square foot accessory dwelling unit is a very good size. And I think on the process side, the regulatory side, it's incumbent on us to look at that on an ongoing basis and say that's problematic. We need to go back and revise the regulations, or it's not problematic. It's okay, we can leave it. The other important thing to remember when we talk about doing this by right is this is on the radar of states like Rhode Island. The state of Rhode Island is at a right pushing ADU. They have legislation pending on this. And it's actually more open-ended than what we're actually doing. So I think that if we get this right and we're a few steps ahead of the state of Connecticut, I think I think that we'll be in very good shape. So I just think that's a really good compromise for the square footage, maximum. I like that idea.
Okay. Any, was there any other input?
I just mentioned Carol about 37 Mike Road, and I don't think I really need to say anything now, because you summed it up very well of what I was thinking. I think you're right. I agree with you, and I think it should have that limit, some limit, and not be looking at switching houses and having a lot of your regulations to take care of that.
Let me make
He
the
did.
mention that John did at our prior, public hearing section. That an attached ADU, really, we don't address it, you can put as big an addition on your house as our current zoning regulations permit. They can put a second kitchen in there and whatever bathrooms in there, it's about the number of bedrooms in the structure and health department thing, so. Okay. We all comfortable with this? Like this?
I'm very comfortable.
Okay,
Yeah, I think we had talked about 950 last meeting. We were sort of focusing in on that, but there was no real justification until we found out, well, yes, in fact, you can do it 2 bedroom, 2 bath. 950
I
square.
just love getting rid of the formula.
Yeah, it's so much easier.
All right, thank you, Justin, for channeling us.
Okay, so, excuse me, I just needed some clarification, so coming back to the other subject we talked about, let's say 8.33 is the way to go. How are we handling people come in, it was the subject that was brought up about, well, they're gonna build a big, let's say someone has a house on their property already that's 950 square feet or less, and they wanna build another unit that's bigger,
Attached or detached.
detached.
950 is not that big, I know.
No, but I mean, let's say the original structure is 950 or less, but they wanna build a big house on the same property.
I'm one,
They could have had a big house and built it.
that's my perspective on it, you know, that's just,
But then this doesn't mean anything anymore.
what do you mean?
Well, it does.
So just because now they're just gonna call, whatever this bigger structure is on the plan, they're gonna call that the primary structure.
As long as one is 950 or less.
Yeah, that's fine, that makes sense, yes,
Still has to be 950 or less.
okay, hold on a second, please. You guys good?
Okay.
Yeah, I think this keeps it relatively simple too. Yes,
Yes, okay, once again, Carol Wallace, 37 Lake Road. If you switch those houses like that, and you have something that was bigger than the 950 square feet. If you know, if you allow something more than that, like, I look at my house, it's 1,600 square feet, I could certainly build something larger on my property. As if you gave me that ability to do so, and switch houses, I could build something much bigger than that on my property. But that doesn't take care of all your other regulations that you're talking about, like say, driveways, for instance, you cannot have community driveways, you know. And if the person isn't living there, I don't know how to take care of that. So I'm a little bit confused about those kinds of things, and then also what Robert Powell said about the spirit of it. I don't know what the real spirit of this is.
I think we discussed the spirit of it, and I don't know that we would want to cover that again. And as far as, who's gonna take care of it, that's not a zoning issue. So we don't address non-zoning issues, just like we don't address sanitary regulations, because we have health department to do that. Just to try and answer your
So
question.
somebody.
Just as a point though, you said your house was 1,600 square feet.
It's.
It wouldn't work. by building
16.
a bigger- It wouldn't work by building a bigger one and calling yours an ADU, because the ADU has to be less than 950.
Yeah, well, if you did, that's what I'm saying, but if you didn't, you can switch houses or something. Thank you.
It was, yes, ma'am.
So just, Kate Starkey, 21A West Street.
Okay.
Just speaking from someone who has a piece of land that probably we could do an ADU on, and, I think 950 square feet would be very reasonable. My son's always said, don't sell our house, we'll figure out a way to keep it, so we dad can stay there. This would allow us to do that, if we decide to do it. We currently have acres with future potential inheritance, we might have another 9. So we have the abilities to sort of address families like mine to be able to stay in town and actually bring our children back to town who currently don't live here when they can't afford it, or there's a community housing center there, you know.
Yeah, there was,
John Millward, 8 Upper Woodland Terrace.
I didn't.
Like, So aren't you governed by your lot size, how large of a structure you can build anyway? So,
There's various restrictions, right?
yeah, so I mean, if you have a 950 square foot house and you wanna build another structure, it's still governed by the lot size, correct? Yeah, that's what I thought.
Any of the regulations.
Yeah,
There's side yard, front yard setbacks, they vary depending on whether it's a conforming lot or non-conforming lot.
Lot coverage.
I can imagine very, very few people who had an acre and a half, even 2 acre lot, ever thought way ahead. Shove their house way to one side in anticipation of there someday being a second house.
yeah,
Seldom would that happen. Could happen, but seldom.
Yeah.
So, you got a house parked right in the classic perfect spot. You got a well radius. You got side yard setbacks, front yard, rear yard, septics, and you got your neighbors.
Yes.
That you have to deal with. And so, third,
I think we've hit most of the points on this. Yep. Then to move on to the next section.
and I might add, I have not
Yes.
always been an advocate of the larger multi-bedroom units. Yes, but I'm getting to feel better about it because of this conversation. Yeah, me too. And the reality of it is that there are so many other factors that weigh in, and it doesn't become a town-wide plague issue. It really doesn't.
Okay, we're gonna move on to the next proposed regulation change. Next one in our packet is the one to revise section 9, the definition of structure. Let's talk about that. So this was meant as a housekeeping item to make it way more simple to do reasonable modifications to your house without triggering a zoning compliance action. And one, I'll read through the proposed changes. We eliminated some items defined as structures. Now I'm gonna read what those formally were, but we're proposing to not call them structures. Chimneys, handicap ramps, bay windows, satellite dishes. Pardon me. And then. Let's see. Retaining walls and public utility equipment, it will remain as defined as a structure. And then we go further on, handicap accessible ramps or residential heating, air conditioning, condenser units, propane tanks. Because there's a whole separate set of regulations that define the location of propane tanks and generators no more than 10 feet away from the principal building. Meeting the current building code are not considered structures under these regulations. So all those items that I just mentioned, some of them in the existing regulation and most of them added to this are no longer going to be considered quote unquote structures. It's not that they're not, but we don't want to regulate them in zoning. In the lake overlay zone, new unroofed terraces, patios, and similar hardscape, semi-impervious or impervious surfaces greater than 100. It says SF, John wanted to define it as spelled out square feet. Or modifications or different additions to unroofed terraces, patios, or similar hardscape, semi-impervious and impervious surfaces after the effective date of these regulations that are equal to or greater than 100, and then changing that to square feet instead of SF, shall be considered structures. So the real change here was what we're no longer going to consider structures. So you don't need to get a zoning permit to put a mini split compressor on the side of your house, or to put a generator in within 10 feet of your house, or to locate a propane tank. Those are just things that there's no longer a zoning review of that process. And hopefully we come up with more items in the future that we take out of the realm of zoning review, and we encourage people to give us input on that. Let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could you just clarify what you said and the lake overlays,
Well, in the lake overlay zone, because of the nutrient allocation analysis, we do regulate any change to a structure that is 100 square feet or more, or will result in adding to a previous structure that is that amount. So if you have a deck and you want to expand it in the lake overlay zone, the only way that we can review the nutrient allocation plan, the nutrient allocation analysis, is through zoning. So that triggers, doing more than 100 square feet of changes triggers that.
We've had this on the books for a while, but the only change we're making is changing S dot F dot to square feet. And I don't know why we're bothering, but
from this point, thank you.
Is there another interpretation of S dot F dot?
Single family.
I didn't want to add 100 square foot single.
I think, John, our town planners, he's been such a gift, he's got a real deep.
I was just, no, Ramsey, I was just gonna say, taking it out of zoning, it'll still have to go through all permitting.
Correct.
So, but then,
Yeah, especially around fuel tanks, we sat down with Mike Lester, environmental, and there was expensive permitting and requirements. That's the thing, we should refer to that. We should be regulating that.
And one of the concerns we had, for example, about locating generators, especially in close quarters around the lake. And we'd encourage somebody to put the generator behind their house. That's not always possible. Sometimes the generator has been located closer to a neighbor than to somebody's house. So what we're saying is within 10 feet of the house is a reasonable standard to use. And maybe someday it'll be within 5 feet of the house, I don't know, 10 feet. Okay. I think we covered everything. The only thing that we haven't really covered formally are the points that you brought up, Bob. And I would say that we're pretty much ready to vote on this, but I'd rather not vote on it at this meeting. I'd rather defer that to our next meeting. And by practice, I've always suggested that we keep our public hearing open until the night that we're going to vote on it, but indicate what our intentions are. Because if there's any of those points that Bob brought up that we might want to add some modification of what we proposed to this point, I'd like to be able to do that. And there's, we talked through most of those, and we want to take some extra time tonight and talk through them and decide if we want to see any of those added to the draft that we're considering. I'd rather do that while we're in public hearing mode, because I love public hearing, public comment on that.
Could you pass that paper down?
should I make a copy of it and send it to our phone?
Well, I mean, if you want to talk.
If there's like 3 or 4 items, we don't know.
Let's do that. If you could make a few extra for the public, that would be great. Thank
It's
you.
not an exhaustive list, and we've kind of discounted a lot of it already. Yeah.
I'm gonna wait till she comes back. Before we do anything. So it's a big document.
So you're favoring finishing this up tonight?
That would be me, but I'm one member of 7, so.
I think-
agree with you.
No, wait till our secretary's back. Yeah, let's hold off on any comment. We'll just take a couple minutes, and that way we can hand out that list to all of you. I appreciate it, bring that forward. So it really spurred a lot of thought on that.
I think we should regulate about the humidity, maybe we can lower the humidity a little bit. Can you work on that?
No, I like my humidity. I don't have much water to my cigar humidor.
Hotter today here than it was.
Yeah,
But the humidity is higher.
I'm correct. I on the phone today, he lives in Spring, Texas. I called him on his cell phone, and he goes, well, before we start the conversation, I will tell you, we're in the middle of a hurricane and I have no power. And I said, well, hang up on me and save your batteries.
I got fucking people on the brainstorm.
Really, we're gonna wait, anything? Sure.
Someone from Commission on Aging had sent me an email, but she couldn't be here tonight. Is it appropriate for me to just read it when
Sure.
Mary Kate comes back?
Just do it as part of your, questions and testimony. That's, thank you very much.
Did you hear the 128 step down?
Yeah, I thought,
Did you see that the motorcycle was five?
no,
Yeah, and he saw him. Yeah, another guy was thrown from the bottoms. And I don't know how, I mean, what was it?
And that battle was.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You think it's hot here?
I used to work out in that area. That like within the Southwest. Like this time of year.
Like in Arizona.
Arizona and
Yeah. You know, 90 years old. You know, it's full of humidity. Yeah, so it's kind of nice.
yeah, 90 degrees perfect.
Yeah. I think so too.
Thank you. But I know that you appreciate it. Yes. I know.
I just, I'm not understanding why zoning deals with the water issue when we have a lake commission. Isn't that the job?
Because there's only two legislative bodies in town, the Board of Selectmen and the Planning and Zoning Commission. We felt that reviewing that data as part of a zoning review was the most effective method of creating an implementation process for that aspect.
the Lake Management Advisory Commission is actually, that's what it is, it's an advisory committee. And makes recommendations to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah.
They can then act.
So planning and zoning never takes credit for the nutrient allocation plan. It came purely from the Lake Management Committee. It wasn't something that planning and zoning commission followed. Yeah. So let's go through this list of other items here, because the square footages, I think we've already addressed the first two, what's called paragraphs. I don't know that we need to say it has to be on the residential zone lot. Let's eliminate that one.
Yep.
If I could get some suggestions to move this forward. ADU on a lot with only one principal single family dwelling. So the question would be, how many lots in town exist with two different single family dwellings, and would they be precluded? Why not let them add an ADU off of one of those?
Well, because that would be addressed in multifamily.
Yeah.
So it's explicit in the sense that multifamily kicks in with 3 or more.
Okay, so we're lining that one in. One ADU per parcel, again, we already discussed that. So let's just say that if it's a lot of record, a buildable lot, we don't need this next one. ADU must be on a conforming lot or a legally non-conforming lot. Then,
But I think the next one is would self-correct anyway, because you can't have a detached on half the day.
it's just a good point that was brought up, and I appreciate all the research, but I don't think we need that one either. Maximum size for an ADU, a detached ADU is 2 bedrooms. I think we
Just says, it doesn't say detached, just attached or detached.
but an attached one by definition just becomes part of the house. They want to add 3 more bedrooms and they have enough septic for it.
Then it's a kitchen, but the minute you put a kitchen in, it becomes an ADU.
Okay.
Right.
Yes,
So I think we've got this covered by saying 950.
Yeah, I would rather use the delineated square foot instead of just.
Let them do what they
but
want.
that's for a detached ADU. You can have an ADU as large as you want. If it's attached to the house. You can make a 2,000 square foot ADU as long as you keep it to 2 bedrooms if we did that.
I don't know what we do.
But it would be fall under the duplex.
Yeah, but then we get into, so if it was not an ADU and somebody just. A couple and two kids, they're having three kids, they're having twins and they want to add an addition. Do we really want to like start?
That's not an issue.
I know it's not, but it's not any different other than if you were to add a kitchen. So so on one hand, one is acceptable, and on the other hand, we would have to. Manage that somehow through a regulatory infrastructure that we couldn't enforce anyway. So why don't we just leave it the way that it is?
So John had brought on this house, he brought up the point that if it's an attached ADU, you can pretty much make it as big as you
Yeah.
want. Just take one of the rooms and allocate it to the primary residence. I mean, I know that this is gonna happen this way, so let's not create something that isn't logical.
Is there any reason we should care?
No,
Honestly,
I
anybody?
don't feel. Yeah,
No, I think again, anything that you add on that has a kitchen, independent kitchen, will be considered an ADU.
Yes.
Okay, what if I finish my basement, my walkout basement, put a kitchen down and make it next to the pool? Does that mean that's an ADU?
Not if it doesn't have a bedroom.
good question, Bob.
but
Why do you
that's,
ask it now?
You know, but it does.
It becomes, it has a second kitchen, it's.
Two kitchens in.
But you're talking about finishing the basement and the kitchen.
And the kitchen, because my pool is right there, and I'll be able to walk right there and do whatever. Is
but,
that considered an ADU?
And now's the time to talk about
so this is part of what concerns me, because. Not from a regulatory standpoint that I really care what people do, because people put candy kitchens and they put summer kitchens in their basement all of the time. It depends more. Yeah. It's more of the intent, you know, so what we need to ask ourselves is, are we capable of micromanaging to the point where do we want to delineate it and go in people's. So you're trying to figure out, do you have your in-laws living in there?
I think I can use all of that. Let's just put a line for maximum size for an ADU is 2 bedrooms.
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah, not yet.
no additional driveway or curb cuts are permitted. One of the concerns I've always had is changing the complexion of a neighborhood to look like California with all kinds of second homes in everybody's backyard. I don't think our land values are so high here that we're gonna be driving that. What if they do wanna put a curb cut in? We'd allow them if it was just a single family home. If they could get it approved.
Well, we're kind of moving on it. All we do is we say they have to have adequate parking.
So let's take a look at
Let's take that one out. Okay. We'll get rid of the next one.
Anybody else?
At least inside the ADU must be above grade. I think just let the building code.
Yeah.
Define that. Okay. I do like the idea of the ADU not being higher than the principal dwelling.
I'd be
And
fine.
I'd
with
like to add that. And we already eliminated the last one, so. That one thing. And no, I would think we should keep our minds open to the future in case people come forward and want something different. But I don't think that's a burden, and I'm just worried about. Groups of homes having a vastly different feel after we're done with this, and I know that we don't think it's gonna happen, we don't want it to happen.
You see it all over Florida. The original ranch. There's like a 2-story addition on it. So weird.
Right, that's what I was talking about earlier.
Okay, so I would want to incorporate that in, where would we put that one sentence in the proposed reg? That's the only thing I would. So are we comfortable saying we're ready to go to likely close the public hearing at the next meeting? We could close it tonight. But there's really no benefit to closing it tonight if we're gonna close it next meeting and then vote on it this next meeting. What are people's thoughts on the commission?
I'm very comfortable with where we are right now. like to see us get across the finish line as soon as we can, but
Yeah, I think if the only one we're gonna add is the one with height
yeah.
in the 950s. That's actually where we decided. I think we can do that. Okay, I'm comfortable with that. So the question is where we would add it. It's a matter of mechanics. I'd add it after 839.
Yeah, we should have it in.
Make it 8310.
I would put it before, I would make the last one 10 and then make this one 9.
Okay, so we're gonna renumber 839 as 8310,
And then make this 8.
and then 839, and the way it's worded,
See what I'm doing?
Yeah.
Because 810 is like a bigger one.
yep. So 839, the height of the ADU.
And that is higher than-
Yes, ma'am.
If you put 2 bedrooms and a kitchen above your detached garage, is that an accessory dwelling?
Yes, it's a detached accessory dwelling unit.
And then maybe
So the question is, how do we define the square footage of it? We use the garage below it as part of the square footage. I would think not, that's not habitable space.
So,
We just need to finish space, not the garage space.
so is that already allowed in regulations
A
before?
detached living unit, I don't believe
No,
is.
it's an attack.
An attached,
Detached.
you said detached, I thought.
Detached,
Detached is not currently allowed, it would be allowed in the
the
future.
garage is not
If
attached.
we-
So you're talking about a detached existing garage, putting an attached accessory dwelling unit in that building.
No, detached.
On the second floor,
That's
above,
Yeah.
the garage,
Currently, it's not permitted.
currently it's not permitted.
Currently, it is.
Under this,
Well, it doesn't mean they don't address
what it is, because they may have been grandfathered in and built prior to a certain time, they might have been built unpermitted. Let's just talk about what we want planned going forward. There's no way for us to address what's out there right now.
So that would be considered a detached ADU.
Pay for. Okay,
So let's just end with this, so this is the language as it is right now. So a second dwelling unit, either as an accessory dwelling unit, or as a conversion to a two-family dwelling, may be added to a single-family house, or may be added to a new or existing freestanding structure with approval from the zoning enforcement officer. So I don't know how long we want to go down this road, but my interpretation is that if it's an existing.
No, but it's provided the following conditions, all of those conditions have to be met.
Right, but that should count as I think we can do this already.
No.
No, that'd be the primary. Oh, I thought you can add an ADU, an attached ADU to. Any existing building on the property.
The 13.
I mean, worst case, it doesn't really affect it.
Are you talking about attached to an existing garage rather than existing house?
Yeah.
Well, it's the dwellings wouldn't be attached.
No, what we're back to is, it says even putting an addition on the house. For an ADU, is follow on.
Sure.
And we said before, we didn't think it happened
Not following.
in the discussion for 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. I may have confused myself.
Oh, yeah, I think, yeah. I think, yeah. It's helpful. What's the question?
Just a minute, please. What's the question, Justin?
Well, to answer this original question was that if you had a detached garage that was existing on the property, if you could put an attached accessory dwelling. You
I
could
think
make
she was
part.
asking about if she and put it above it.
Let's say, let's say it's a walk-up attic right now, and you just wanna finish it, that's what you do.
You can do it as long as the height isn't higher than the primary building.
So it's just a finished attic.
Define the height.
It's defined in the regulations. Height of the building is defined in the planning and zoning regulations.
Yeah, we're not gonna go through that tonight.
No. And after we went through that for a year.
Yeah, we're not- we're not gonna do that.
Hey, well, we're not doing structure tonight.
The question is, hold on, I just want to keep this moving. Is there any other question? Do you have?
It's defined by where it's sitting, not.
We're not gonna review that tonight.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's very complex with very specific definitions based on the average elevations surrounding type of the structure, pre-excavate, pre-development and so on.
I understand that. I was on that committee.
Yeah.
With you.
What would it go? And what we're saying is the height of an ADU cannot be higher than the principal development. Okay, so if you wanna put a second story on a garage, it can't be higher than the main house.
Okay, I'm sorry, I understand your question. Actually, what we're saying.
So I'm not sure. Ann, did you have something? Good, just say.
Here's height.
I think I understand what's going on. So in other words, if you have an existing house that's 25 feet high, but the garage is on a piece of property that's higher in elevation,
Yes. There.
doesn't matter.
Our regulations already define that because it's the elevation above ground level. Based on the average elevation within 10, I believe, within 10 feet of the house. Measured in increments going around the periphery of the structure.
So the
So
answer,
you would measure that
Okay.
on the ground. Not on the height.
We would, each structure would have its own elevation standard.
Thank you. That's okay.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Yes.
Should we say in that?
Just hold on a second.
Thank you.
Ms. Cabral.
You don't have to, this is Carol Law. I am still a little bit confused about the attached. When you have an attached, it can be any size. Are there other regulations that would keep that from being? I just don't get it, don't understand it. You have, go ahead.
The thing that limits, or the thing that defines your ability to build anything in the lot has to do with square footages,
Yes,
structure. You've got side yard setbacks, you've got front yard setbacks,
no seconds.
footprint of the structure, you've got rear yards, lot coverage. You've got lot coverage, which is a percentage of your house versus the total.
Yes,
You've got septic system design. You've got the reserve area for the septic system. In the case of space. You've got a well. You've got a 50-foot diameter around, 75-foot diameter around your well that you can't build with. If you were on the lake, for example, you gotta have a 50-foot setback from the lake. There's all kinds of these things.
yes, I do understand. Is that there are many things already in place that will keep that from being, and I just wanted to make sure that that is so. Because I didn't know if things have changed for the years. Thank you.
No,
I think you answered.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are we ready? Okay, I'm not.
But we can get back to height, should we say height as defined by section such as? So that it doesn't become a question of the ridge height versus the house gate.
No, because we defined the height of a structure within the.
Okay, so height should have a capital letter,
Okay.
right?
sure.
Okay. Good point.
And probably should say then the height of the height of the principal.
You got that. So we're gonna renumber 839 to 839. And 839 is gonna become the height of the ADU cannot be
The ridge
higher than the height of the principal.
available.
Yeah, and so for capital H and capital A, because we define that. All right, we good? Yes. We keep moving this forward.
Yes.
We want to do that. Thank you. I think we have a finished document. Yes.
Just a thought, I just wanted to share about striking, maximum size for the ADU for the 2 bedroom. And what's to stop somebody after the person passes away in that unit, from building out the 3 or 4 bedrooms and renting the place out?
They have to get a zoning permit to enact the construction process if they're gonna do it legally. So it's up to the zoning enforcement officer to review our regulations to see if what they propose is permitted.
So they did it on their own, I mean, then.
We can't do anything. We can't do anything on your own legally.
Yeah, I know, right? Not everybody follows, so.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, just a thought.
That's why so much conversation about enforcing,
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
some things just can't happen.
thank you.
Sometimes just having the regulation out there helps keep it going on an orderly path
Yeah.
over time. Okay, so are we comfortable with this as it was modified? Are we comfortable closing the public hearing? Any other comments from the public? Millie?
I just want to go on record with Kathy Rose comments, which you guys have already addressed. She said, I think that the size should still be up to 900 square feet, 950, thank you. For the existing house size, there shouldn't be a differential for people with small houses, big large homes. The standard should be equitable for everyone based on the law. If people choose to build a smaller size than they would be, that would be up to them. By making the size stated that it could be up to 900 feet, it makes it easier for zoning by stating up to 900 feet. Builders proposing multiple dwellings on a lot for affordable housing would then have the option of building smaller than. If zoning wants to state a range, maybe that makes sense. But I think your 950 makes sense.
Thank you. Any other thing? Yes.
Talk about 37 Lake Road. What if I wanted to build a substandard, what's the minimum size house I can build?
There is no.
There is none?
No.
I can build a 200 square foot house? No.
It's against the law to determine.
You can build a 50 square foot guest house.
There are certain requirements for room sizes in the building code.
Yeah.
Has to be.
Okay, I retract that 50 square foot. I'm sorry. I really should go. Yeah.
Talk about it again, 37 Lake Road. What, it's a public hearing, is it not?
It is.
Are we not addressing the United States flag anymore?
That has
At the
been,
meeting, opening meetings,
we don't do that at the opening.
you don't do that anymore?
No.
That is really amazing,
Well, that's our practice.
I guess,
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
thank you.
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion of that? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, so at this point, this is closing on the public hearing on all 3 points that were before us. And under unfinished business, are we ready to vote on these? Yeah, I'm comfortable with them. So I don't know that we need to read the whole set of regulations in because they've been very well modified. There was only one modification we did on the fly here, was adding section 8.5.9 and renumbering 8.5.9 as 8.5.10. 8.3, I'm sorry, excuse me. So that being said, does anyone have a desire to read through all the regulations? Are you comfortable voting on them as they've been drafted? You have our changes recorded.
Yes.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we accept the modification to the planning and zoning regulations, and I'm gonna quote which specific clauses we're changing to section 21, 22.3, 11, and replace it, section 52.7.19 and eliminate section 52.7.121 for multifamily dwellings. Also, to revise section 8.3 for accessory dwelling units and 2-family units. And the zoning amendment to revise, application to revise section 9 definition of structure. The motion was to approve those.
Second.
Bob,
I can say.
Bob out there first. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. That would be unanimous. Thank you. Great job. That was a really nice job. And I want to thank the help that we have from the public and all of the really solid input that we have from the public, and Justin for being head of the subcommittee that spearheaded the regulation.
I gotta say, it's refreshing to have some involvement from the public. Because too often we're tasked with making changes or bringing something. And then it looks like we put something through that we had an agenda for, and it isn't. So it's refreshing to have so much public involved.
And we have a lot more to do, so please stay involved.
Yes, please do. Invite your friends.
We appreciate your hard work.
Well, this has been refreshing. The subcommittee that's been working on regulation changes. We're always saying, how can we make this more simple? And how can we eliminate regulations that we don't need? And my thought, how many pages are zoning regulations? We're 105. So I would love a 60-page zoning regulation document. And I don't see that with my time by chief.
We're at 116.
16. So that being said, as we're always looking, when we have a subcommittee meeting, we had a much better result because of the input from members of the public.
First, it brought up the idea of having affordable housing in 2006. So thank you very much for addressing this issue and at least moving it forward a little.
Yeah, that can't be understated because this isn't just us. I mean, you guys were working on this for a long time. I'm glad that we could make some headway with it, but.
There were people before
Yeah.
2015 as well.
So nothing under new business. No regulation revision discussion tonight. We'll go back to our subcommittee and come up with some other recommendations. Under communication reports, we won't review item 10.1. Anything in open discussion, commission? Anything from the audience?
Brandon Kincaid, I just want to again say thank you. This has been a great process, and I agree with Justin. I think you just passed a very forward-looking set of regulations that I think will really position Columbia well, and the state probably does eventually require one. Actually, as a model for other towns to follow.
I'm probably understating it, but from my perspective, the detached dwelling portion was huge. And simplifying some of the structures is huge because it caused a lot of friction. I mean, I had my own problems with it. And just making this a more simple process. And we really haven't made a lot of progress toward making housing more affordable, but we just need to keep chipping away at it. Whatever we can do from our end.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing in executive session. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor. Thank you. Good night. Did you get this done? You're not.
On the next. After the next.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you okay? You okay?
Yeah. Really? Thank you.
That was one point. Go further on. We think we had it in the calculation. Yeah. And we